Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Paranormal Roundtable. Paranormal Roundtable is 3 words, Paranormal Roundtable. And I'm your host, Josh Turner, and with me, as always, is my main amigo.
How's it going, everybody? This is Sal.
Sal.
I'm happy to be here, as always.
Still haven't changed your name back to Armando.
Never. I can't, man.
Wow.
Sal is so much easier.
Folks, you're talking to a man who hates his birth name.
Well,
a moment of silence
for that. It's not really
that.
hates. It's just easier to say Sal.
I guess I'm only the one giving the moment of silence. I will give a moment of silence for the late name of Armando. So,
yes. Dun, 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 and all that other type of
And then we have a big parade, and long live Sal.
There you go. That's it.
Right. Okay. The king is dead. Long live the new king.
There you go. That's a good way to put it. All right, man. I tell you what. Given that quick recap of last episode we did, Devil's Backbone. So much goes on there. So much has gone on there.
You got to plug the email, Sal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Before we jump.
Yeah, everybody's excited to jump right back into what we were doing on the last installment. The email is daswolfman88@gmail.com. daswolfman88@gmail.com. That's how you help me make this magic happen.
Yes.
So send me your stories. Anybody's got a story you want to tell, and we'll see what we can do. You want to talk to me? You want to talk to Sal? You want to interview? Whatever you want to do, let me know.
Yeah, let us know so we can get things arranged and we can get your story on here.
Absolutely. So where we left off last episode was the Dogman. Devil's Backbone starts with a D. Both of them.
Oh yeah,
Devil's Backbone. Now there are some Dogman stories out of it.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't doubt it.
We have a Goatman story that I was going to talk about that we didn't get into.
Yeah.
Very creepy. That is a very creepy entity. What do you call it? The cryptid. A very creepy cryptid.
Yeah. Just the sound of when people, the descriptions that have been given. That just blows my mind.
A lot of people, when they describe this creature, they say that it'll mimic people's voices. I was kind of blown away by that. Up to this point, I don't have any stories of them mimicking people's voices, but maybe somebody's
had an encounter.
Give me something
that where they were, I guess, heard this thing or maybe saw this particular rare cryptid.
Bad enough that you would have to encounter.
Yeah.
But then it's like this is your mother, clean your room. My mom doesn't talk like that, but I'm just saying maybe your mom is like, Emilio, clean your room.
Yeah. It could be
Pablo,
like
Pablo, come to Florida. Pablo, we miss you. I don't know if that's how your mom sounds, but then you turn around and it's like the devil. He's like, well, actually, I'm the Goatman. I just was using ventriloquism to throw my voice to.
Yeah, but in all seriousness, folks, this is one of those that really, really, even for some people out there who've had their Dogman encounters, Bigfoot encounters, et cetera, a Goatman.
Still unnerving.
Yeah, it definitely.
I have had a Dogman encounter, and like I said on another episode,
yeah,
a sort of Bigfoot encounter. It was like I kind of missed the boat on it, but hey, you know what? I have not had a Goatman encounter, and I am not in a hurry to have a Goatman encounter. There is no rush.
I'm in agreement with that.
There's no rush for here. So we talked about Burt Wall's book, and we talked about some of the things that had happened out in the Backbone.
Yeah, a lot of that history out there.
The history of the Devil's Backbone. Yeah, we went over. We talked about the monk.
Oh yeah,
Espinosa, and then we talked about the Confederate soldiers
with the.
Now, another sidelight to that before we get into the Goatman thing, I wanted to say that according to the history of what I have researched, that the Spaniards had buried treasure out there too. Supposedly.
I wouldn't doubt that either.
So there is actually buried treasure, and I don't know the whole story of it. I know that some of that land out there was taken over by the state, I believe.
Quite possibly.
And who knows, how things work. If the government hears, hey, there's money out there, then we're gonna. So maybe somebody located something, and if I'm out there with a metal detector, folks, I'm gonna tell you right now, that treasure is mine. I'm not gonna be like, oh, I better go and report this to the local magistrate and let them know that, hey, I found some gold doubloons out here. I'm sorry. I know history's great. I'll donate 1 or 2 to the to the Bob Bullock Museum over here, and then the rest is getting melted down into gold slats, baby. So I can put some spinners on my rims on my truck.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't use them for spinners. I'd use them for other nefarious things. But no, seriously, I read that there was like the Spaniards that had gold, and that some of it had been shipped up there from Mexico.
Yeah,
and they were using the gold to trade with. The French were coming in at that time. They were just starting to make inroads. And the French also, that was very interesting. They had a very good relationship with the natives. They treated them more as equals rather than how the Spaniards treated them as like, you were our slaves and you will do what we tell you or we will lance you.
Yeah. That's...
And now the Comanches and the Spaniards had this love-hate relationship in the way that sometimes they would have the same enemies with the Apaches. The Apaches would act out rebelling against the Spaniards, and then the Spaniards would have to put them down. And sometimes the Comanches would just kind of do it for them because the Comanches were so warlike and brutal. The only success that anyone had on any large scale against the Comanches were the Spaniards in the early going. They when they first came through there, they finally were able to drive them to a certain point out of the area where they were at. I was reading about the Spanish Lancers, and there was a general, I don't remember his name, but he won a big victory out in the West, in New Mexico.
All that area.
Yeah, an El Paso area, where he had actually defined a border where they could not go too far into that. And that was the only, and then for 200-300 years, nobody could touch them. I mean, they were the absolute lords of the plains. And once the Spaniards kind of faded out and said, "There's nothing here for us but death," they leave. Then the Tejanos, as the Spaniards, the Comanches call them, because most of the Comanches did speak Spanish, believe it or not. When they started coming through there, that's when a lot of other antics began with the Comanches.
The shenanigans ensued.
Yeah. A lot of killing, folks, went on out there. To this day, they still unearth like skeletons with like arrow points in them and whatever.
Arrowheads, yeah. What makes me wonder about all this? I would love to meet a Native American.
Be a Spanish overlord and have serfs?
No, that's not my style. No, I'd like to meet a Native American that that is very much from around that area or has connections.
I don't really think that there are any Native Americans that live in that area. There's no reservations out there now. I think that most of them have been like displaced.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
probably right.
There are Mexican people that have lived out there for generations. Yeah, I was going to say generations, and for a long, long time. And then, of course, the Anglos when they came through there, and now there was a strong German population. Yeah. Further up the road, going to Green.
New Braunfels,
and the Germans kind of settled there. Now, the Germans actually had a very good relationship with the Comanches.
Oh, that's it.
The Germans they have a long history of getting along with native peoples.
Yeah.
And, and a lot of people that don't know history, I'll just say this. The Africans, during World War II, when there was the fighting was thick and heavy, they were a lot more cooperative with the Germans and General Rommel than they were with Montgomery and the British.
Wow, obviously.
They didn't like the British. The British always looked at everybody as like, you are our subjects.
Wow.
British policies make the world England, sir. And so they kind of had a problem. The Anglos kind of had that same attitude. The Anglo-sized peoples, they had an attitude of like, this is what we're going to live here and you're going to go away.
Yeah,
and the Indians were like, no, and they just began to shoot them with arrows. It's kind of how it happened.
Yeah.
So I imagine it's like that too. They're like, you need to leave. And they're like, no. And then an arrow comes flying out, and then all chaos ensues. And then everybody becomes a ghost, and then we're here to talk about it.
Yeah, there you go.
That's how it all went down, right?
Yeah, but see,
very simplification of that, folks, but that's what happened.
Yeah. But the biggest thing that gets my wheels turning up in my brain is the fact that there's that Goatman legend out there, and you mentioned in the last episode that you have a Goatman that was told to you by someone who witnessed.
Yeah, that Goatman story, I'll get into that, but just wanted to lay that history out there. So sorry for that sidetrack, but I needed to lay that out there.
Yeah, there's it's a huge, long history.
But I do have an important question for you, Sal.
Yes, what is that?
What size are the wheels in your head?
Oh, that's
I'm just thinking, if we recover some of that gold, I need to know what size the rims need to be.
Well, I would say about an inch to
20,
an inch and a half.
Yeah. Wow.
No, they would be
very tiny wheels.
Well, I don't have a huge head. So that would be the equivalent to 20s or something. I don't know.
All right, folks, let's get into this Goatman story. All right, y'all are probably going like, "Shut up!" All right, here we go. Really, that's directed at you because they they love me.
Sounds good.
That sounds good. Tiny head Sal. Folks, his head is in proportion to his body. I will be very honest, Sal. You are not an ugly individual. I don't really judge. I don't judge men, but I don't think you're a very ugly individual. I think I have a face made for radio.
Hey, that makes two of us.
Right. So this Goatman story, what happened was Gary Scorpion, he was my roommate. He was on a previous episode, and we talked about the house. Well, he actually worked with a guy, and this guy became really good friends with him. And I'm not going to give the place where they worked at and all that because that might be a little too much information. He had lived out there his whole life, and he had some stories. And one was he was coming home because he always worked at night. So he was coming home from a job he had, working late night or whatever, and it was I guess it would have been early morning that he got off at like 5 at that job in the morning. So he was coming home, and it was after 5 o'clock in the morning, but it was still dark. But he said that as he was driving down this gravel road driveway, I guess it would have been, when he turned off of this particular road to go onto this right there at this crossroad, I guess it would be, he sees this goat-headed creature, for lack of a better term. It had tall horns that kind of went up and rounded. Is what he said.
Like a goat.
Almost like to me it sounded more like a ram.
Right.
But like the way he said that the horns rounded, but they didn't curl.
Okay.
So I don't know what that is. You can draw your own conclusion to that. He said that the creature was white. It was white.
Oh.
His lights illuminated it, and that the eyes. He said it was very pale white looking. It had the little beard,
the little goatee,
and it had an elongated face. It was the head was very goat. Very goat-like, yeah. And that the hooves were very prominent, and that it had hands, arms. The hands, everything was white.
Oh, wow.
Like it had a thin layer of fur on it or something. And he told us this story, and he told me and Gary and another guy that worked with him, and they were all on break, and I was up there, shooting the breeze with him. And he's telling us his story. And they're all out there smoking cigarettes, whatever. But he said, "I'll tell you a story." Finally got him to tell me that story, and then he laid it down, and that nailed the description of what, like I said before, the demon god Baphomet type looking goat creature. But the way he said that the horns went back and kind of curled, I don't know what that is, dude. Well, he said that they were very tall. And this thing was very tall, and I asked him, "How tall do you think it was?" And he said 7 feet, maybe. From the hoof, from the bottom of the hoof to the top of the horns. He said that it might have even been taller, but like as the horns curled back some.
That's those kind of stories when you hear it, but it's not surprising for the Devil's Backbone. I mean, so much.
No, nothing is surprising when it comes to that place. So it doesn't surprise me.
Did he drive by or did he stop and look at it?
I'm pretty sure he drove by. Why would he stop and look? What in the heck
is
wrong with you?
I would have tried to stop a little bit to look.
That's
and then
crazy, dude.
Again.
Like, I would have been out of there, dude. Like, this guy is like, what are you talking about? I mean, I didn't ask him, did you have a 50 caliber machine gun with you that you could fire upon this creature if need be, like with incendiary rounds? No, I didn't ask him that. Now, he's a country boy, and I know for a fact that he always carries. Because one day I was up there with him, and he showed me a nice Ruger that he had.
Oh, nice.
But I doubt very seriously that if that was the piece he was carrying, would have been able to do anything to the devil's minion over there that he saw. I mean, like, I didn't even ask him if he stopped or whatever, because I didn't think that was even relevant. How dare you, Sal? You're going to put that man's life at risk in this story?
Just slow down a little bit. Get a good look.
Luckily for us, he's still alive.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that he survived the encounter. You're over here trying to, like, did he stop? Well, did he take a picture? No.
I don't know about a picture.
I'm assuming, when you assume, but I'm going to tell you this. I think that he probably from the way he told me the story, I'm pretty sure that he just kept going.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame him. I wouldn't blame him one single bit.
And I tried revisiting that with him once or twice later on, and he just nothing ever changed. So I believe him. That same individual, we can get into a couple stories he had.
Hey.
His uncle claimed to have seen a Sasquatch-type creature out there on more than one occasion.
Oh, wow.
He had an adjacent property, and he said that near that property, there was like a creek, and it would rain, and that creek would get... And he witnessed two Sasquatch like jumping in and out of the creek. Like he went down there near the creek, and there were two hairy Sasquatch, like quintessential
like
Sasquatch looking creatures ever described. Said they had like pointy looking heads, which is kind of weird.
Well, no,
I remember that, like a ridge on their head.
Yeah,
but that's one of the details that he told me.
Oh, okay.
And he said that they had these like kind of like cone heads, you know, and that they were like down in the water and they were kind of like splashing in it. Now I asked him about that. He said he had gotten some details from his uncle over that he had seen these two individual creatures on more than one occasion. He said that they were only about 6 to 7 foot tall.
They must have
and that they weren't real big and developed. That they were just kind of, you know,
slender, I guess.
I don't know. He didn't say slender. He just said not real big and developed.
Right. I guess I'm saying slender. I guess when you compare that to the reported sizes of the full grown alpha males and or just, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten a lot of Bigfoot stories, and I have, you know, I have one lady. Oh my gosh, you know who I'm talking about. She sends me a Bigfoot story a week, and it's because she believes that they have habitated in her land, and that she's growing vegetables, and that they're eating the vegetables, and that there's all these different sizes, and they have very different names. They all have these like Ezekiel and Hezekiah.
I guess she's gone and named them all, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's kind of like breaking Amish, but she's baking Bigfoot. I don't know. Hey. I don't know what. But you know, she talks to me like on these messages like I'm supposed to know, you know.
Right.
That's just what Bigfoot do. Well, you know what? I don't know that.
Right.
Bigfoot is not my area of expertise, but I'm not an expert on any of this.
No.
All I'm doing is getting your stories, and I'm putting them on the show, and that's about it. We'll get into her another time. She sent me like probably no less than a dozen encounters that she's had with these things. And that is also not in Texas, so that's not been, you know. Right.
We can't include that right now.
Yeah, and if you're listening, I meant no disrespect at all.
No.
I can't keep up with all the encounters, and I'm not able to comprehend a lot of it. So you know more about Bigfoot habituation than I do.
And that's true. Some know more than others, but at the end of the day, you only know what you know, and a lot of those experiences are individual.
I know. I don't want to see one.
Well, I can't say that.
You might want to see I don't even want to see a big toe, much less a big foot. I'm good. I'm good. I don't want to. I just like, you know, that day that I was driving around with my wife, and
that was enough for you.
That, you know what? That's as close as we came. You ever seen the movie Vacation with Chevy Chase?
Yeah.
There's a new one out that's not new, but it's been out for several years. But it's got the guy Ed, whatever from The Office.
Yes.
Can't remember his name from The Office, but anyway, that new one's hilarious, and Christina Applegate's in it, and the guy that plays Thor, Chris Hemsworth. That's a funny one, folks. You want to check it out. But the old Vacation,
the original,
and Chevy Chase, and they stop at the Grand Canyon, and he walks up and just kind of nods his head twice, and he's like, "Yep," and then they get back in the car and keep going to Wally World. And she's like, "Wow, it's so breathtaking," and he's like, "Yep," nods his head twice, and then they're back in the car and they're gone. That was their trip to the Grand Canyon.
So that's basically you with.
That's how I feel with the whole Dogman. I mean, Bigfoot or Dogman. Yeah. It's like, I don't need to go and be like, oh, there it is, you know, like, and let's go sniff it and see what's going on.
It's the double head nod, and
let's get some samples of its blood. No, I'm good, dude. I'm really good just being in the studio and talking on a microphone about it, because I get your story and I'll retell it. But I'm just not real into the going out there and tromping around and messing with these things. I know they exist. Now I don't 100%. I haven't seen a Bigfoot, but I believe. I 100% believe. But I 1,000% believe in Dogman because I've seen it, folks. All right. And so anyway, I don't want to see another one. I'm not in a big hurry to run out there and go find it. And it's kind of weird when people tell me, oh, it was terrifying. It was horrible. Well, I'm going out next week to go hunting. Really? Like, really? Like, how does that really, like, you're just okay with that? Like,
well, you could be like, at that moment, you like, does not compute.
I just can't grasp it. I don't get it. If you've seen one up close, especially, why would you want to be out there? That's like people that go swimming in the ocean. They're out there playing in the ocean, and everybody does it. And right underneath them is this great white, And I mean, I'll be real honest. When it comes to the ocean, a piece of seaweed can rub against my leg, and it's Jaws.
And you're like, you're done.
Jaws is grabbing my foot, and I'm scared. I'm like, everything is Jaws to me out there. I don't care. I'd see a piece of driftwood, and there it is.
Well, at the end of the day, all that means is that people are strange. People are going to do their thing.
Well, you know what? And speaking of strange, I'll get back to the story that this guy told me. This uncle of his saw on his property a couple times. Now, according to him, nobody else in the family saw it but the uncle and I guess an aunt that lived on that property. They never had any children. Okay. So they did not see that, and no one else that saw these two creatures, but saw them on a couple of occasions and knew that they were out there.
Oh.
So that is the cryptids that they saw, the stories that they saw. Now, that being said, there are a lot of ghost stories out there, and one in particular that I was reading up on is that there is supposedly a ghost herd of cattle that runs through there.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's herded by, I guess, the descendant of a Native American that had one of the last Native Americans that lived out there.
Oh,
and that his name was Drago.
That's the nickname.
Drago,
guy,
yeah.
right?
His name, I'm sorry about that. His name was Drago.
Or is that the real name or just what they gave him?
That's the name they gave him. I guess I'm going to just talk to you, Tony, real quick. You looked that up, the information about that in particular.
Yeah.
They kind of just call him that. I don't know. They call him that?
Yeah, I guess it
sounds like the guy from Game of Thrones. Was he a Dothraki? Maybe that's what it was. He was a horse. He was wrangling horses out there. No, seriously, folks, it's supposedly it's a herd of cattle that runs through there. And now here's the funny thing. Now that I had heard, I didn't know that the guy who was supposedly the guy that owned the cattle and that it was his land. I didn't know that part of the story, but I did know from someone who told me that they had an experience with those cattle.
Those ghost cattle.
Ghost cattle. They were in an area called the Haunted Valley. And these ghost cattle came riding through, and they witnessed them. There were 3 guys that witnessed them. He said he was with 2 other guys, but that they were almost translucent. You could see through them. Oh,
that was freaky.
And he said that it was so weird, but you could feel the hooves, the thundering. It sounded, and now, folks, we're gonna get in later on to some stuff. I had my own personal experiences out in Devil's Backbone because I used to go out there, and I went camping out there. Now, that's not a normal thing for me because I believe that when you go camping,
you're inviting some of this stuff to come
visit.
I
just think that what's that little tent going to save you from?
That's true. It's just a piece of fabric.
What are you going to roll yourself up in a sleeping bag so you can be like a
taco for them?
Basically, you're just going to...
For any weirdness.
You become snack food for whatever creature wants to come out of the woods and eat you.
Yeah, maybe.
A Hot Pocket. There you go. Like maybe, or whatever,
or an egg roll,
or if you're really skinny, you could be a taquito.
Yeah, you go.
Basically, you're some sort of wrap. Anyways, that's my thing, and so I had some friends, a group of friends who said, "Let's go camping out there." So we did, and I'll tell you about that later. Don't forget. To remind me about that later on. I have a story about that. But so what? And then of course we're gonna bring my brother on, and he's gonna tell you.
Oh, he was with you for that little event.
No, not for that. No. This is the story that he told you.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you wanted to tell that. Now, I wasn't going to tell it, and I was going to do that on a different episode. And you and my wife both were like, you got to tell that story because that's a very good one. It wasn't anything unpleasant or bad. It was just very weird.
Yeah.
But we'll get into that. But first, let's get back to this. There is a mine that was there. And there was a person that was killed, and people see like what looks like these mine workers.
Yes,
that they look like they're just kind of wandering around like lost. And there's a female and a child, I believe, like they were settlers that were probably killed by Comanche or Apache Indians, and that they wander around, and that they have gone up to people and asked for, like can you help us, and then they disappear.
Oh, that's
very sad. And then there was a story that I read about a little ghost girl that a little boy was playing with this little girl out there on a regular basis. And then the mom and dad were like, "Who are you talking to?" And he said he was talking to the little girl with the hole in her head.
Oh, that's
so very, very
creepy.
Those are some very creepy ghost stories. I had heard of a story from someone that claimed that they saw a battle between a small company of Spanish soldiers, what looked like Spanish soldiers. They had the helmets and everything, and that they were fighting what looked like natives.
That's interesting.
And so. So I got some stories about that. I've just little short stories or whatever. Did have a friend that was a buddy of mine that went to school at Texas State. His girlfriend claimed that one night they went out there wandering around, a group of like several kids, and that they did encounter two what looked like Native Americans just walking along a trail. And that they just kind of came out into from the brush, both shirtless. I don't know what the deal is. These people, they didn't wear shirts or what.
The weather.
I guess it was just hot or whatever. But they came out and they were just standing there, and it was cold. She said it was like chilly, like they were wearing sweaters, but these people weren't wearing anything but just loincloths. And she thought it was odd. They looked at each other, and one of them said something, and. I'm gonna repeat the phrase because he did tell me what he thought it was ketete or something like that. That sounds silly saying it, but ketete, I don't know what that means. I don't know what language that is, but that's what they said. And then they went back into the brush. And I remember this guy telling me and a friend of mine this story, and I was just like, "That's weird. I don't know what that is or what that. I haven't researched that word." To know what that means.
That's true.
From any native language, because a lot of the native languages died off. And when we were talking about the Comanches, I was reading something about the archaeological finds, and that they believe that the Comanches wiped out like a lot of tribes out there. The Comanches were very, very aggressive and violent people. Telling you, I can't stress that enough.
Absorbed them or killed them off.
Absorbed them or killed them off. Absolutely. The Comanches that lived in that area were known as the antelope eaters. There wasn't a lot of buffalo.
Right.
But they were the remnants of another tribe that had been defeated and then absorbed into the Nermana culture, the Nermana being the Comanches. Because the Comanches at first did not call themselves that. They just only referred to themselves as Comanche when that's how the settlers, the Anglos, the French, the Germans, and the Spanish all knew them as Comanche when the name was given to them by the Spaniards. But them themselves, they called themselves the Nermana.
Wow.
But they were definitely a very aggressive and warlike people. And so I'm doubting that these Indians, that these people are encountering were Comanches, because they probably wouldn't have been as they probably wouldn't have been very nice. They're not going to be like, "Hey, ketete," and then walk off. They might have thrown something at them, a tomahawk. That's what I'm saying. I don't know, but I know that one of the stories that in Burt Wall they talk about, there was a guy who went hunting, and it was actually on the Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah,
and he went up into a tree stand, and he started to hear footsteps going around the tree stand, and so he sees this being that looked like an Indian, and he said it was a cold night. It was in late November, I believe, and he's wearing hardly any clothes, but he's wearing like a hat, and he comes out from underneath the tree, and he looks up at him, and he's just kind of standing there staring at him, and he said that he just kind of walked back into the woods and disappeared. Well, then he said eventually, after, nothing else went on for a couple of hours, he got down out of the tree stand and he began to leave to go back to his truck. This being, this same
this
Indian,
entity or whatever it was,
came out and began to parallel him, walking step for step with him. He said it made him very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I would have had chill bumps.
And he said that it was so strange that the guy almost had a glow about him, and that when he got to a certain point, then the Indian just kind of vanished.
Man.
And I hear these stories. I've heard a lot of these stories, and of course a lot of them are just real quick, small, people driving down and seeing what they thought was a Native American on like
on the side of the road.
Side of the road, yeah.
Well, there's a lot of dirt roads, a lot of small back country roads, for lack of better words. And those of you that's grown up out in the country, well, you know what that's like. And especially for the people that's grown up, in Texas and in and around Central Texas, Austin area, all that stuff, you can understand. We got a lot of scrub oak, we got a lot of cedar, we got all kinds of stuff around there. And so at night, some of those cedars get so darn big, it just makes everything black. But you can look straight up and see the sky. If it's if it's a starry sky, you'll see it all.
The Devil's Backbone's like that. I've been out there a lot. You can go up and look and see. I know that Purgatory Road is a place too where there's an old cemetery out there, supposedly haunted.
It makes you wonder about Purgatory Road and how it's got its name.
I don't know. That would be interesting to.
I would maybe it's maybe it's an implication to how the whole concept of purgatory is, that you died, you didn't go to you didn't go down below and visit the devil, and you didn't get to heaven. You're kind of stuck in limbo in purgatory, and just about it's kind of that free-for-all zone, if you will, good or bad, or good and bad, if you will.
I would say Purgatory Road probably got its name from the wandering spirits out there. That's what I would think.
That's what I was getting at. I was going to go with that direction. Yeah. It's amazing, but it goes back, I know some of you guys have heard Vic's shows and in some other shows where they mention, how do you think, they throw that question out, how do you think that some of these places got their name? In like Devil's Mountain, or I don't know if that's a real place, but I'm just using that as an example.
Devil's
Mountain.
This, Devil's Canyon, Devil's that.
Yeah. And I know that I've heard it on many videos, and I think there's something to it. There's something to it.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. And let me get back to these ghost encounters. Sorry about that. I almost dropped the mic. Let me get back to these ghost encounters, and then eventually, because we still got a couple Dogman encounters to talk about, and we're probably going to do another episode on this. So
there's so much.
There's so much stuff out there. I got some little people.
Oh yeah.
There was a couple little people stories out there that people have seen these things. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like a vortex or a portal or some sort of time.
I'm inclined to believe it's the whole deal with the vortex.
What if it's a time thing?
Yeah, well, no, all that, space and time, the fabric of space and time, ley lines, the vortex, all that stuff.
I'll need to do some research on that. I think I got some episodes of Rick and Morty I can go back and check out, and I'll see what Rick Sanchez has to say about
space and time and all that good stuff.
Because Morty, he's lame. He doesn't really know anything about science. You can't really get nothing out of him. But Rick.
Yeah,
Rick, he'll tell you, man. Let me tell you, dude, a wrinkle in time.
Oh yeah,
he'll tell you.
But it's really interesting, all the weirdness that goes on, and I'm sure we're probably just scratching the tip of the iceberg.
Of it. I don't think we could ever do all the stories out there.
No, and can you imagine if we ever went down there and if we were able to just talk to a lot of the locals that have been around there?
I've already done that.
No, I'm talking about as many as we could, just to hope.
Oh, you mean just to go and canvas? Let's just go out and pass out flyers. You know what?
That'd be good.
Can we do that, Tony? Can we get some flyers printed up and we could just go and say, "Have you had a strange encounter? Talk to these two people you don't know and tell them everything."
You never know, brother. You never know.
Oh, you're not going to do it? Wow. Well, I'm sorry, folks. We were going to do that and get more stories, but Tony said
Our
no.
Creative director.
So, I'll write a cardboard box little thing, and you can just stand out on the road with it.
Hey, I think
we'll work for stories.
Yes, we'll work for stories.
We'll work for stories. We'll mow your lawn
if you
for
tell us
stories. And then they're like, "Well, I got about 5 acres. Oh, I don't want a story that bad."
You got a tractor?
I tell you what. Now let me get into this. A couple of these other stories here. I got one. There was one that was really. It was kind of interesting. I mean, it's not like a amazing or whatever, but it was pretty interesting. There's a tavern out there. Now I haven't been out there in some time, but I know that there. I think now there's like 2 or 3 places out there. I think there's like a dance hall or something like that. I know they're like going that way. There's like a Mexican restaurant out there.
There's there's been a lot more development in the last 20 years
and people
better.
like to go out there. These ghost tours, there's like 2 or 3 of them out there now.
Yes,
it's become very commercial, but it's not as bad as there's still a lot of you can still go out there and drive around and get spooked.
Yes, there's plenty of that.
But I got a story. There was a young lady that I talked to, used to go to Texas State, used to work for us at the club years ago. And we got on the subject of the Devil's Backbone. We were talking about that unsolved mysteries thing, whatever. And she's like, I got a story. We went out there. They were having a party. They were getting together, you know, whatever. And while they were having this little get together, she saw what looked like two, I don't know how to describe it, like wilderness people. The way the way she talked was like they were like olden times people, like wilderness people. And she was like, they just like came out of the woods, you know,
kind of like pilgrims.
And so my brother actually made a joke. He's like, "Oh, they were pilgrims," and he actually said that. You know, you were talking about that. And then she's like, "No, not like pilgrims, like from the Plymouth, you know, but like old settler type people." And she's like, they looked like old cowboys, and that one of them was carrying his rifle kind of sideways, and that they came out of the woods. And I'm thinking, maybe there's some old boys out there that just dress very Western, and maybe that they. One of them was carrying a rifle. Right. Maybe the other one had and so maybe he was carrying one of them single action pistols or something. Mm-hmm. So I started asking her about it, and she said that they just stopped on the edge of this little party that they were having and just kind of kept staring at them. And everybody was just kind of talking and whatever. Then gradually, 20, 30 people out there, everybody just kind of starts looking like, who are these guys? And they just kind of sat there and they very sullen face. That's my words. Her words were not that complicated. She just said they looked very creepy and very creepy.
That's all she could say.
Well,
that's all she could muster.
Yeah. When I was, I don't know if now, but everybody that was the big creepy and random. Those are the two words that they like to use. But she said that it was very creepy and random. And then of course, me and my brother started laughing. We're like, oh, okay. Yeah, it is very random and it is kind of creepy, but she said that their faces were looked angry.
Oh.
And that they were staring at them, and then they just kind of walked off, and that two or three of the people that were kind of staring at them as they walked away said that they faded away.
Now
so that was weird. She said she personally did not see it, but the people that she was with said, yeah, it was like they just literally faded away. So what was that? That was weird. I don't know how to classify that. I don't know what that would be, how somebody can fade away.
I would attribute a lot of that to, like you said earlier, the vortex, ley lines, that kind of thing going on there.
Let's touch on that. So you think maybe these people, they actually came out of some sort of time?
Well, the vortex, where you get anomalies, space and time and everything else it's that weird place where the past is hanging around with the present.
Mm-hmm.
And since the quote unquote fabric, since it's so thin that it can be crossed over. The veil. That's a better word, but that's my opinion. I'm no expert, but that's how I'm seeing this.
So it was like a spiritual.
Yeah.
So they weren't, okay, wait, I'm trying to follow this because I'm actually intrigued by your idea. Do you think that they might've been spirits, or do you think that it was actual time warp or something?
That's a hard one to call because I'm thinking a mixture of both the past.
Because I got a buddy, my friend Pete up in Colorado. Hey, Pete, if you're out there, he likes to listen to my show. He claims that he thinks that that's what ghosts are. And we've had this conversation many times, that they're just time slips or some sort of time slips.
It potentially could be. I mean, it's so...
Yeah, because sometimes you'll hear about hauntings, and I'm not no expert on this either.
Yeah.
But the residual haunting, as they call it, it will be something that replays over and over again, and it's like on a time loop.
Yes.
And then you have hauntings where it's more like
the energy is there.
Yeah, and it's just like this entity, it has this energy about it, and it's cognizant.
Yes.
Those are the ones that are a lot more scary.
Yeah.
That's the ones where you're like, who are you and why are you in my living room? And, and they're like, looking at you and they're like, I'm here because I'm here. And they're looking at you like they know you're there.
Uh-huh. They're acknowledging you.
Very self-aware. Now, that friend that I was telling you about that Gary used to work with, I will tell a story about that.
Oh, please do.
He had a haunting that happened in his house because his house had some ghost activity. And speaking of a ghost being cognizant, he had a ghost that actually, he was standing in the hallway talking to his wife. And I remember one story he told me was that he felt something brush against his hair. And he turned around and he saw what he thought was a woman wearing like a white gown kind of walk through from the hallway going from the den into the den, like toward the kitchen.
That's odd.
And so he said that was the first time he had seen this thing, but that it wasn't the last, that there was another time where he got up in the middle of the night to go to the refrigerator and to drink. And I remember he said he wanted to get a glass of milk. Now, me personally, I don't like milk. I just can't. But everybody drinks it. Believe me, everybody drinks it. I'm a weirdo. I don't like milk. My dad's the same way. We don't like milk. So when I told him that, I was like, that's the scariest part right there for me, is that you were drinking milk. I don't like milk, and it's just like, ugh, okay. But he got up in the middle of the night, and he said that sometimes when he couldn't sleep, he would go drink milk. And so he got up, and he was in there, and he went to go grab the carton of milk. He went to go pour the milk on the counter. He had one of those island, because I got the details from the guy, and he said it was like an island.
In the middle, yeah.
In the middle, because they had actually renovated that house. It was an old farmhouse, or ranch house, whatever.
Okay.
And that he looks, and he had one of those back doors, and I asked him to describe it. The glass in the middle with the little squares going in. It's like squared, the little square panels all through it that are glass. And he said that he saw this woman just standing there looking at him with this very sad look on her face, and that she was wearing like a white dress that looked kind of tattered, and that her face looked kind of dirty. And that she was standing there just kind of looking at him, and then he noticed that she didn't have feet or really lower legs. She was just kind of hovering there. And he, and I thought, okay, is this where you drop the milk? And he goes, no. He goes, I just put the milk in the fridge and walked back to bed, because what else am I going to do? He goes, I knew right then and there it was a ghost.
Yeah, the creep factor went straight to 10 right
there. Yeah,
there,
and he was just like, I just walked straight back upstairs, and I told my wife, there's, the next day, there's something weird. That's when she said that when they first moved in, there was an old piano there.
Yes.
And they had a couple times woken up with hearing like cling, 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 cling.
Somebody
cling.
playing on it?
Yeah, and so they got rid of it.
Oh.
They got rid of it, but they didn't at that point. They hadn't seen anything, but when they began the renovation, now you hear this too.
Yes.
You hear this too, and I'm going to get into this in a later episode, because I got a story from, and I'm just kind of segueing into that really quickly. Somebody that was doing renovations on a very notorious serial killer's boyhood home.
Oh,
yeah, and that's going to be pretty. Yeah, it's pretty creepy, and he had some weird experiences in there. But let me tell you. Anyways, back to this. He said that when they began the renovations, that's when the activity kind of picked up, and it was always this one particular entity. He felt like there was a woman's presence with him a couple times. Like when he was in the house, he felt like his son at the time was real small, so nothing was really going on there. But the wife did see this woman
with the white
standing
tattered dress.
With the white tattered dress, just kind of standing there looking down at the son as he slept.
Oh.
The grandmother came over to babysit when they went out of state, and the entity appeared to her, and it was touching the little boy's head while he slept.
That would be unnerving to hear.
Yeah. But it doesn't sound like it was. It doesn't sound like she was
really harming the child.
Yeah, that she was like a villain.
Yeah, it wasn't malicious.
Yeah.
That's really, and you with that ghost story, to me, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that goes on in the devil's backbone so damn much, bro. Man. And again, going back to like we said earlier about the vortex and the ley lines and how the fabric of space and time is the veil so thin.
Maybe it's just thin there.
Yeah, it has to be. That's the only thing I can think of.
I got one more of these ghost stories from his property, and that is story worthy, right. I guess, show worthy.
Right.
And then of course he just had a couple little quick things. Like one time in particular, like his wife, I guess they had a little garden that they had, and that she was working in this garden, and that she heard a voice, like speak. Like
a male voice?
No, it was a female's voice. Like it was always that same entity.
Oh, okay.
And it said, "Are these tomatoes?"
Oh.
And it was like she had just planted like this tomato vines or whatever.
Yes.
And that they hadn't really come out yet. But she looked up to answer, and she's like, "Who's on my property?" And she said they had like 4 or 5 acres, so it wasn't like somebody would just be, Mm-hmm. And so when she looked up, she didn't see anything.
Nothing.
But it was a female's voice that clearly said, "Are these tomatoes?"
She heard it clearly.
Clearly, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that was weird. And of course, he had said that he had heard voices before, but it was always like real brief. Like he heard something that was like some word that he heard when he was at the dinner table one day, and that his wife didn't pick it up because she was moving around in the kitchen.
Correct.
But that he heard a word, but he couldn't make it out. But
it was kind of garbled.
Well, I asked him if you had to guess what it was. He said it was mother.
Oh.
But that's all that he could discern.
That was his
from.
best guess.
Yeah, he couldn't discern what it was, but he said that as time went on, I guess because at the time of that it started, his little boy was like 2, and at the time that he told me these stories, his son was already 5 or 6, and then I asked him if his son ever had any. He says not really. Like his son hasn't really said anything, or
about any weirdness.
About any of that. Yeah. And I've lost touch with him, but if I ever see him again,
you can ask him again, man.
I would probably. Yeah, I've done that. I've actually run into people at Walmart and be like, "Hey, man, I haven't seen you in 10 years. Do you have any good ghost stories?" And people are like, "Okay,
all right, you haven't changed, Wolf.
You haven't changed. You still pester and badger people for weird stuff."
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what you do. My mom said that. My mom said that when I was a little kid, that I would ask people weird, creepy questions. Like I'm talking 3 or 4 years old, and
you're still representing. You're still staying true to form.
I would ask people in line at the grocery store, "Have you seen a ghost?" And my mom would be like, "Where does he get this from? Why is he?" I don't remember doing it, but she said I did. Maybe. Well, she said my sister would ask really, really, really odd questions like, "Do you have a bathroom
in your house?"
Yeah.
Or
and it was just like, and she would just be like, "Why do my kids ask these?" But she said at least mine were like they were pertinent to something,
Yeah.
So, sister, if you're listening, sorry about putting you on the spot like that.
Yeah, maybe she just had to know. Maybe some people didn't. That's why she asked.
Maybe she came from in her past life.
Yes.
They had outhouses, and she was fascinated by the water closet.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense when you think about it.
Well, if you never watched a lot of TV when we were growing up, both of them did. So let me say, the flicker box must have been something that they were amazed by, because that was the main thing right there. I couldn't. When I was a kid, I never could watch TV. I had to wait until everybody was gone, because by the time somebody came home, I was bottom on the totem pole.
Oh, okay.
The youngest child, and everybody got to watch something over. So I got to watch G.I. Joe Transformers really quick, and then one of them came home and started messing up my day, and so then that was it. No more. You're done.
You had to let it go, huh?
You got to watch your little quick cartoons, and then I could go outside and pretend like I was watching something.
I was a big Three Stooges fan. I'm still a big Three Stooges fan. I love that show. Yeah, I love them. But anyways, wow, I'm telling you, this Devil's Backbone. Sorry we got off on that rant, folks.
Yeah, the next installment, we're going to talk about Devil's Backbone some more, but I'm going to tell a couple of Dogman stories. We just had to get these other encounters out, and I got a couple little people stories for you from out at the Backbone. And so we're going to wrap this show up. We my guys over here telling me we got to get going. So everybody, I'm going to plug the email, daswolfman88@gmail.com. daswolfman88@gmail.com. So we're going to go ahead and put a cap on this one. And
hey, here's some thoughts. This Devil's Backbone, like we've been saying, it is a big one. It's huge. It's massive. So much stuff going on there. I was thinking about this, Wolf. I heard you mention, and I heard your brother mention about an incident you guys had out there that was just odd. Are we going to get a chance to get that? We're going to get a chance to let the folks hear about that one.
Absolutely,
I need to hear.
We're going to interview him.
Awesome.
And we're going to talk, me and him, about. I'm going to tell my experiences, and hopefully, and we'll have time to get all that in. And I want to get into a couple of Dogman stories, but I don't want to start telling those stories, because we're going to be running out of time. So
I know. It's too bad that we only get an hour to do this, but you know what?
Well, the problem is, I'm just going to be real honest. It's Sal.
Oh, it's me. Yeah, it's
Sal comes to the studio to record, and then he's like, "My wife said I have to be back by 6, so let's do this now." And he's very rude about it, ladies and gentlemen. And then she begins to call. And just cause all kinds of heck, and then we're trying. I'm just kidding. I made all that up. I'm just
what
joking.
I do.
No, I see you looking at your phone though.
No, I've been busy here as of late, so unfortunately I have to look at my phone. The great thrills of having a 17-year-old daughter, and that's why I never have any money in my wallet. It's just an empty wallet. So, but hey,
that sounds like my Uncle Butch. He's like, He's like, I carry a wallet around, but I got no money.
Exactly.
His wife, she's got all the money. He's like, I don't, he goes, I can buy a candy bar, or soda maybe.
Well, that's why I say the joys of having a 17-year-old daughter, an empty wallet,
And I agree, or an unclean room.
And she's the baby too.
I've raised 3 teenagers, believe me, and they are a mess. I've had all boys.
You're lucky.
All my nephews, I raised them all, but they
that's part of it. They get you going and all that good stuff. But anyways, in the end, I had the pleasure of knowing 2 of them. They turned out pretty darn good in my book.
2.
I know 2 of them.
You know Zane?
Well, Zane, I haven't seen him in a while, so I can't give you 100%.
Hey, man, he's a man of industry. He's working. He's up there. He's up there in Connecticut.
Hey, hats off to him and kudos.
Give a shout out to you, Zane. Yeah,
there you go.
You actually gave him a ride up there. When you first met him, you had to give him a ride.
That's how I met him. We was talking with him. Yeah, but like I said, I haven't seen Zane in so long, but I'm just saying I've got the pleasure of knowing 2 of them a lot more.
Yeah.
That's what I should be saying, because that's what I mean.
And they're good kids, because I had to beat them.
No, really?
I beat them. Chancla, everything, whatever I can get my hand on.
Chancla. Oh, they got the chancla.
No, they didn't need to get beat, like they probably should have.
Well, we all needed it. One time or another growing up, we were all hard-headed.
I can tell you, I dang sure did. Yeah. I ended up in some places I shouldn't have been. That's why.
And that's how you ended up with all these stories, too.
Not really. Not from being in places I shouldn't have been. Yeah, I guess maybe, but not.
You met a lot of interesting people that way.
Yeah, and beat them up.
Well, the ones you kept around as friends obviously have all these stories. Yeah,
but I did get a lot of stories from people, and so, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Goodbye, good night, wherever you're from, whatever region of the planet you're from, or whatever other planet you're on.
Hey, have a good night. Have a good day, like you said, and then just remember, we're going to do this again. There's still so much more on the Devil's Backbone. Yep. So stay tuned. We're going to give you another installment. It'll be coming up as fast as we can get it together. Have a good one, folks.
Sayonara.